Yeah, you can go.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by talking about this guy right here. I don't know if anyone knows what this animal is. It's kind of unknown. It's called an American pika, and it's kind of like a relative of a rabbit. It's a little rodent, and they're very sensitive to climate. They're only found in a few parts of like Grand Teton National Park or like the Great Smoky Mountains. And sadly, because of global warming and the temperatures are rising, their populations are actually really endangered right now. Like they're one of the most endangered animals by global warming. And a lot of the population is dying off, but because of the National Park Service, there's a lot of conservation efforts in place to try and save them so they don't go extinct, because they're very cute, as you can see. So as you can probably guess, I'm going to talk to you guys about the National Park System here in the United States. I think it's a really cool organization that doesn't really get enough recognition. The parks benefit us in a lot of ways, and they're just really beautiful. And I just want to talk about like the history of them, how they benefit us, and like what the future has in store for them. Okay, so a lot of people like to credit President like Teddy Roosevelt with the creation of the national parks, but it was actually a man by the name of George Catlin, who was an artist in the early 1800s. He was really famous for painting Native American tribes, and in the 1830s he went on a trip out to the Dakotas, and he started worrying a lot about the impact that westward migration was going to have on the nature. And so he thought that there should be government sanctions in place to protect the nature against the contamination of humans. Okay. So it wasn't until, well, Yosemite was the first national park. It was donated as a state park in 1864, and it was kept under the care of the Department of the Interior. But then it wasn't until 1916 that President Wilson passed legislation creating the National Park System. So as of today, there are around 420 national park sites and about 63 national parks. And so in the last few years, the Great American Outdoors Act was passed in 2020, and this legislation set aside a large chunk of money to take care of any deferred maintenance or like park restoration, just to keep them nice and pretty for visitors. And in a lot of recent news articles I was finding, it was just talking about how dangerous the parks are, because sadly there's been a lot of deaths at the national parks. The Grand Canyon is actually considered to be the most dangerous park, and in 2020 alone there were around 750 search and rescue missions, which is a really staggering number. So like, people get way too close to the edge trying to take a selfie and fall, sadly. So I next want to talk about how the parks benefit us. So the parks help keep the environment clean. They're one of the most biodiverse places in America, and they help keep a lot of endangered species thriving, like the American pika I talked about. And they also kind of help prevent natural disasters by like preserving the physical landscape, like preventing floods or landslides and things like that. And Yosemite Park alone provides water to about 3 million people in California, which is a lot of people. And the parks are also a really big source of tourism. So a study in 2019 showed that for every dollar put into the national parks, it was equal to $10 put back into the economy. So very significant. And as of 2023, the parks have created around 400,000 jobs in the US. So people from all over the world come and not only like see the beautiful parks, but also educate themselves, because there's a lot of rich history behind them. So finally, I would like to talk about the future of the parks. Right now, sustainability is a really big issue for them. Over-tourism is becoming a really big concern for a lot of parks. In 2022, the National Park Service reported a 16% increase in visitors, which translates to about 5 million more people every year, which is a staggering number. But the Global Sustainable Tourism Council was set in place to try and make efforts for parks to become more sustainable and just use their resources more efficiently to just support the increase in visitors, because it's a lot. And sadly, global warming, as I previously mentioned, is really affecting the physical nature of the parks. In the upper left corner, you can see the impact from a flood that happened in Yellowstone Park this past summer. Like a lot of buildings were damaged, and roads and bridges that still aren't repaired. And we're also just seeing more floods and droughts and temperature increases in a lot of parks. There's a fire that happened, that might be Yosemite, and then on the right shows how a glacier like retreated and melted in Glacier National Park. And it may seem kind of like a problem of the future, but a lot of park rangers are already reporting like more dead patches of trees and temperature spikes that are actually causing the parks to close, just because it's not safe for humans. And I know that may seem like really dire and depressing, but it just shows that we should really appreciate the parks that we have now, because they're really great places to be in nature and they help us a lot. So thank you for listening. I hope you guys learned a little something.
Thank you. Great job.